Once I understood. Everything.
Just also as a backup, we're gonna record from here too, because we are having trouble with the Zoom. And I would imagine, especially with the air conditioning today.
So you just share this with $1 million.
Leah,
Yes,
who was the $1 million that we got today?
well, we have 2 from Chad and 1 from Bill Lake.
Okay. Oh, speak of the devil.
Good. Is that right? We do presentation. It's just that one page. Is there also new grant? It's just that there's one. We did that for
Okay.
It looks like my screen is froze. Can everybody hear me or?
Yeah. We hear you. We can hear you, but your mouth isn't moving.
Yeah, I see that.
There's no Montreal Canadian ensembles in fact, so it's all good. Let's go fast.
Hi, Darren.
Hi,
Just making sure you can hear us and we can hear you.
I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, it's 7 p.m. I'm going to call the combined council meeting for Thursday, July 20th, 2003 to order. Before we begin our meeting, I'd like to acknowledge that Stewiacke is Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We have a full attendance of council tonight. Council Ramsey's joining us by Zoom. I'm looking for approval or changes to the agenda.
I'll make that motion to approve the agenda as presented for our combined session of Thursday, July the 20th, 2023.
Moved by Councillor Osborne, a second proposed. Second by Councillor Robert Lane. Discussion on the motion. Question has been called. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. I'm seeking disclosure of interest on the agenda items. Hearing none, thank you. Moving to agenda item number 5. We have 4 sets of minutes here. Looking for approval of minutes. First, 5A is council meeting minutes, April 27, 2023. Looking for a motion. Councilor Osborne.
I have a few kind of changes. I'm not quite sure why the amendments haven't been, that I submitted twice and asked to be completed haven't been. It is a conversation that is happening between myself and the fire chief. So I'm a little missed of why my amendments haven't been completed. And there's also 9J on page, it's missing anyway, 9J, no page number on the minute. So if someone can explain why the amendments that I've presented twice now haven't been
Sure,
completed.
I can explain from our viewpoint. So what we're trying to do is keep an impartiality. So what we're doing is we are having the minute taker review them. So we did for a 4th time review them. She wrote down and she reviewed what she had written versus what she heard. There was no change. So in order to be impartial and make sure there's no conflict of interest on those statements, we left them as they are. And just as a note about minutes, we've been doing a lot of research and reading to see how detailed we need to get and in order to satisfy this question. And what we really have to focus on is covering the key talking points, including voting outcomes, motions, budget changes, and significant decisions. So that's why we left it as what we understood it to be, as impartial members or impartial attendees.
And I think there was one motion maybe, I think this is 5-2.
Yes, so that was adjusted.
Is that correctly? Yes, so it's adjusted.
So that was significant, and that was a voting outcome from a motion, so that was adjusted.
So is there a reason why Deputy Mayor's comments weren't deleted in this section?
Just, can I ask Leah to answer? Okay, Leah, I don't know, I wasn't aware of that question, so could you answer that? Why were Deputy Mayor's comments deleted from what section?
From this, only from this version.
There was nothing deleted. It was copied word for word.
I have the other 2 versions.
I copied, I have them too, because I copied it over on Monday night. I did the whole thing right over. I did 2 changes on it. 9J is actually in there. It's just not lettered J, but the comment is in there about it. I don't know what comments I supposedly removed.
I have right here, Deputy Mayor Chapman relieved to hear the 3-story is not a concern, great job, but it is missing from here. It's at the top. So they moved it around.
Yeah, it's on the next page,
Okay.
Over here.
so it's there.
It's just, that's just a printing situation. I think,
Okay.
from coming up to the top and bottom. It is.
So it is.
No, it was just a reformatting issue, it is there.
It's at the top of the 2nd page. So it's like it's not exactly where it was before.
We can't have the formatting, she does the minor changes.
So I guess my question is, I understand that they don't need to be verbatim. I was asked to send my amendment at the previous meeting for them to be included into these sets of minutes that came to our council, this committee meeting. I did that. I did it twice, actually, because the mayor asked me to send them again today. And I see them not here again. I guess I am getting concerned that it seems to be if I make suggestions, then they're not being incorporated?
That's absolutely not what's happening, not
Okay.
as far as I'm concerned, 100%. Again, we went through those minutes 4 times to try and decipher it, which is why we're bringing another tool as well as Zoom recording. We're bringing this because we want to hear, we can't get it verbatim, we never will.
No,
It's not a
absolutely not.
possibility, so it's not singling out anybody, it's what we are doing with the tools that we have.
I just
That's
do
the
find it
priority.
disjointed because there's a section here between exchange between us, and I find it very disjointed.
And it is, and that is, Zoom is, we're gonna have a problem, which is why we brought this recorder with any kind of outside noise. When there's a train, it's impossible to hear, so we hear your point, and we're trying to work towards something that would rectify that or remediate it.
Okay,
And I will clarify that I was privy to at least 3 or 4 attempts to rectify with it. So going forward, we have the extra tool.
Yep.
And so as council, we're going to try to rectify even the simple situation moving papers. I move a lot of papers because I'm jumping a lot here. That is picked up and it's really difficult to hear. So we can always do better and we're trying. So with that, we can move forward to a motion, please.
I'll make that motion that the minutes for the council session for April the 27th be amended with the letters 9J.
And a motion made by Councillor Osborne, seconder, please. Seconded by Mayor Chapman. Discussion on the motion. Question has been asked. All in favor? Opposed? So moved. Thank you. 5E, committee of the whole meeting. Committee of the whole meeting is 2306 or 08. We have a motion, please.
I just. Question. Was Chad at that meeting? Because I had a note that he had sent regrets, but I didn't know if it was that meeting, Chad, or different meeting that was started later. I wasn't sure.
I do not have a rough notes here, but Chad, or sorry, Councillor Ramsey.
Which meeting was that?
June 8th,
The one that we started at 7:00.
I think that was the one we were having a lot of Zoom issues with.
Yeah, that's right. No, I think I was trying to get on Zoom and yeah, but I just didn't happen.
I think you were ill that day.
But I think,
Yeah.
if I may, it just, his name is up underneath the staff and not down where it says absent.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's just a little typo that it is to know that he will be absent.
Okay, with that amendment, council, we have a motion, please.
I'll make that motion that we accept the minutes of the committee of the whole for June the 8th, 2023.
Moved by Councillor Osborne, seconder, please.
I'll say.
Second by Councillor Turner. Discussion on the motion.
Question.
Question has been called. All in favor? Opposed? So moved. Thank you. Special council meeting minutes, 2023-06-13, June 13th. Any?
One typo, on page 3. I think the word shush is spelled wrong. Yeah. CBCL, down near the bottom.
Yes, it may have been.
Yeah.
All different type of shutdown. With that amendment, could I have a motion, please?
But I just have a question, Chad's missing from this altogether. So I don't. Chad, I'm sorry, they don't want to. Councilor Ramsey's missing from it. So I'm not sure if he was in attendance or not.
I think it was only the one meeting that I missed there.
I believe so.
He's in the comments.
Yeah.
For the ban, right?
So add Councilor Ramsey to attendance. that we were doing.
Caveat, not sure.
Okay, so just amend it into some comments there. Yeah, so we'll
Just do it. Okay, with that, kind of amendment to that motion, please.
I'll make that motion that we accept the special council meeting minutes for Thursday, June the 13th, with the amendment to include Councillor Ramsey in attendance.
Moved by Councilor Osborne, seconded please. We got first. Moved by Councilor Lutz, seconded. Oh, second Councilor Lutz, yes. Discussion motion.
Question.
Question is we call. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And 5D, council meetings, meeting minutes, keep that backwards. 23/06/22, so June 22nd. Before I ask for a motion, are there any amendments needed? That's what I should call first time. Hearing none, could I have a motion, please?
I'll make that motion that we accept the minutes of June the 22nd, 2023 as presented.
Moved by Councilor Osborne and seconded please. Second by Councilor Patrick Flynn. Discussion on the motion. Question has been called. All in favor? Opposed? So moved. Announcements, proclamations. We have a combined council meeting for August 17th, 2023. So just be one meeting as per policy for the month of August. So it's August 17th, 2023. With that, we have a presentation tonight for fiscal 2022-23, and that's being facilitated by MNP. And I believe that my glasses is on here. We have General One.
Darren Chason,
Chase on.
yes, from MNP.
Good
Hey,
evening.
Darren.
Good evening.
Hi, everyone. Well, nice to be here this evening with you. We have a little presentation here that I'll go through fairly quickly with you. So you've been provided already with a copy of the financial statements for both the consolidation as well as the water utility. So what I'd like to do first is to go through and highlight our audit, and then secondly, go through some of the highlights in my view of the financials for both the consolidated entity, and then we'll do the water after that. So I'm going to share my screen. I am going to start with the audit findings report that you should have a copy of.
That's the report you just received.
That's the one we just sent, yeah. So is that presenting okay?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. So what we're doing here is providing you with an overview of the audit, some highlights for you with respect to where we are. So we have substantially completed the audit. A few things have to happen before we can release. Most significantly for you would be the review and the approval of the statements by council. And then once that's done, presuming that that's done this evening, we then would have some wrap-up procedures on our side of things to be able to get it to a final format. But once that is complete, we are in the position to issue unmodified or clean auditors reports for both the consolidated towns financial statements as well as the water utility statements. And I do have that in the appendix for you, a copy of each of those reports. They would be very similar to what you would have seen in the past. I have used, for convenience purposes, today's date as a date for the financial statements to be dated. However, that's more likely to be at some point in time in the near future once we complete the final procedures on our end of the process for completion. We also provide you with some information on the audit. Materiality for the audit is $120,000 on the consolidated basis and $23,000 for the water. There is there is one very small unrecorded item that I will report to you in just a moment that is not material. And then as a result of our audit procedures rather than a factual. So I'll go through that in just a second. We are required to consider fraud and illegal acts in an audit, and there was nothing that would be that is to bring to your attention on either of those matters. On the accounting policies, so you follow Canadian public sector accounting standards for your town's financial statements, and the accounting and reporting handbook for water utilities is the basis for accounting of the water utility financial statements. So, so there is one change to the accounting standards for both those entities, and that is the implementation or the recognition of an auditing standard that requires you to recognize asset retirement obligations. It's in short AROs. This policy is this is the first year that it's required to be implemented. So you will note a change in accounting policy note in the first note of your financial statements is a change in accounting policy. I'd highlight that it's not a change in policy, but rather the initial adoption of this policy. And I'll go through what that means to your financial statements in just a minute when we get there. No significant deficiencies in internal control have been identified. So we will issue a management letter that says that we have not identified any significant deficiencies in internal control. Significant areas of risk is primarily related to your revenues. And that really gets to ensuring that proper revenue has been recorded, and as well as management override of internal control. So both of these risks are identified by our standards as being those that have higher inheritance, and therefore form specific procedures in both of these areas. Based on those areas, we obtained satisfactory audit evidence, and we are required to be independent of the town, and we will issue our independent letter that confirms that we are independent. The next section here are the journal entries that were required to be made to your financial records that were provided to us. So there are, as you can see, 4 entries, I guess, one being just a small correction, and that would be for financial statement presentation purposes mostly. First entry here, respect to capital, some gas tax that had to be adjusted, and then the recording of the accretion and amortization of the ARO. So the ARO is it will be an expected journal entry that you'll have over the next number of years. And again, I'll talk to that in just a moment when we get to the financials. The one item that is unadjusted is a projected error, in that and what that means is that we did a test on your water revenue, and based on the sample we looked at, we had a very small difference, and then projected over the total population, it would work out to be $4,500. Based on that dollar value, we continue with the audit. We report it to you, but we do no further work on that amount. It does not impact our ability to issue our report. The next 2 appendices are the auditor's reports that will be attached to your financial statements once approved and finalization has happened. The first one being the consolidated town. Again, there's no change to this from prior years. And then secondly, you have your auditor's report on the water utility. The difference in these reports is the basis of accounting, and you'll see that in the water utility, in the second paragraph, it talks about in accordance with the accounting reporting handbook for water utilities in Nova Scotia, whereas your town is in accordance with public sector accounting standards. We also have a draft independence letter. So this is new. We haven't provided this independence letter in the past. We've confirmed independence, but we haven't provided this letter. So this letter is covering a period from the start of your fiscal year, April 1st, 22, up until, and it will be the date of our auditor's report. So that date will slightly change So we do confirm that we are independent. We're also required to disclose our fees charged during that period. And during that period, you'll see that we charge $31,460. And what I want to do is highlight this, because this does take into consideration the audit of the 22 year end, which happened and was billed during that time, as well as an interim bill that we would have sent out for the 23 audit. So we're actually covering off a period of about 1.5 audits, but it is on a cash basis. So I just wanted to highlight that for you, and that this is this represents about 1.5 years worth of audit, not 1 year. The final or the next appendix is our management representation page, which will be provided to Randy at the completion of the audit, whereby she will take responsibility of the financial statements and make certain representations that she's followed proper rules and agrees to the journal entries and the unrecorded items that have been presented. One for each audit. Finally is the management letter I referred to that will be issued in final at a later date, whereby we're stating we have not identified any significant deficiencies in internal control. What I'd like to do now is move on to the financial statements. And again, you've had a chance hopefully to take a review of this. So I'm going to try to just simply highlight some of the areas of larger change for you. So as we look at the statement of financial position, you will see that your accumulated surplus has changed by about 460,000, which represents the current year surplus for a moment. So there was some activity with respect to capital assets. So your capital assets did grow. There was about $470,000 worth of new capital assets that you took on for the year. And for the most part, that's your, the completion of the splash pads, some sidewalks, streets, and some equipment in the community center. We did obtain a new debenture for the year, $265,000 for the solar project obtained during the year. So that is new and included in Note 6. The interest rate on that has the range of 2.5 to 3.78%. And the remaining principal payments on your debt has been made as scheduled. So there's no concerns with respect to repayment of your debt.
Darren, if you don't mind just identifying the page number you're on as you go through, please.
Oh, sorry. I'm on page 2 of the consolidated financial position.
Thank you.
So one of the things at the end of the year, obviously your cash is up. So your cash is up as a result of the positive surplus that you had during the year. It's also up because at the end of the year, you have about $390,000 of deferred revenue for some grants that you received that have not yet. So that is expected to be spent in the upcoming year. One accessibility grant, and the other is for a walkability study that will be going. And your payables at the end of the year are up slightly. There were a few items.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Just need to take a pause for a quick second. We're having difficulty finding the paperwork, so apologies for stopping.
Yeah, water's on the top.
Just need to take a break here.
Second. It's the, a town, not
Yeah,
water.
it's consolidated now. Okay.
Water's further down.
So if you could start at the top.
Sorry, Darren, we're on par with you now.
Okay, want me to start over on that?
Council, good?
Sure. Well, I was looking to start over because I was trying to find numbers and couldn't.
Please start again. Thank you.
Okay. So we're at our statement of financial position, which shows your assets, liabilities. You will see that your surplus has grown by about 460,000, which represents the current year surplus from operations. A couple other areas here would be with respect to your capital assets. So under your net non-financial assets, your capital assets You had additions of about 473,000. And a couple of the major projects there would have been some sidewalk work, some street work, the splash pad completion, as well as some community center equipment. With respect to long-term debt, you did acquire a new debenture for the year, or during the year, 265,700 at the end of the year is the balance, and that was for the solar project. Interest rate that you were able to receive on that has a range of 2.5 to 3.78% on that debenture. The asset retirement obligation is a line item that is new to municipalities. It's a new accounting standard that requires you to record the estimated amount that will be required to retire assets that have issues with respect to legislation or regulation. So the main area for you, if you think about this, is a building that has asbestos, and there's a requirement for you to clean that at the time that you retire your asset or you do a renovation. So what the requirement of the standard says is you need to book as a liability the estimated amount that would be required to deal with these issues at the time of retirement of the asset. The offset to that, so the 196,000 is the present value of the cost that you expect to incur in order to deal with the remediation issues. The offset to that is an increase to your capital asset. So for you, for the most part, you had to increase your obligation, your liability, and you had to increase the value of your buildings, which will be depreciated over a period of time. So this is an accounting issue. You do not have a requirement to put this money out in the near future. This is all stuff that's either out 10 or 30 years is what's estimated by your management. But it is new. This is a new requirement. There is a note 1 in your financial statements that discusses the change in the policy that was necessary, as well as note 7 to your financials that explains a little bit more about what the obligation is. So just to wrap up on this page, your cash balances are strong. You got 3.7 million in cash. Keep in mind that you also have 2.15 million in reserves that have been set aside for future use. So of that 3.7, 2.1 have been reserved. As well, you have deferred revenue of 450,000, which represents monies from mostly from the government that you've received to do for grants, that you have received the money, but you have not yet done the work. So at the end of the year, that amounts to 389,000, and the remaining amount of deferred revenue represents prepayments of taxes or water on behalf of your residents.
So Darren, just a quick request that at the end of each page, if you pause for questions.
Sure.
I know.
Anybody have any questions on this page?
Yes, we have a Councillor Osborne has a question.
So when I read note 7, so that ARO is actually regarding the water treatment plant, is that right?
Well, there's a very small part to the water treatment plant. There's only about 11,000 relating to the water. The rest of it would be with respect to the town, mostly your town hall.
And what it is the bulk of it is really asbestos remediation. So there isn't much in the water treatment plant. So it's anything really that's environmental or costly to remediate. So it's mostly the buildings aside from that one.
He was talking about 2.1 million in surplus. Where is that?
It's in cash. Top line.
Oh.
3.7. It's in there. It's part of it.
Okay. I'm like, I don't see 2.1.
It's part of it.
No, so 2.1, so if you were to look to note 10, which is on page 15 of your financial statement, what you will see is a breakdown of your surplus. So that provides you with the details of where these surpluses lie. And you'll see that some of it is obviously capital. And because you do not have a lot of debt on your capital, most of that is actually surplus. You have also created reserves of 2.1 million. Okay, so this is money that's been set aside for future use. And you also have a surplus of the operating fund. So keep in mind that, and we'll talk to this in just a moment when we get to the operating fund cannot have a surplus. Any annual surplus relating to the operating fund gets transferred to your operating reserve. And you'll see that you actually had about a $220,000 transfer, I believe, from the reserve this year.
So are those reserve funds in note 10 both water and operating? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, so it explains there on the left what it is. So water operating would be the 651, general capital and water capital represent the largest part of your surplus. And then your reserve funds at 2.1. So it does represent both water and non-water. And keep in mind that this set of statements is consolidated because it represents all of the funds and operations that you're responsible for. So it does include your water utility. Now you do have a separate set of statements for water utility that's done under a separate framework because it's required. The Utility Review Board requires that set of statements. This set of statements covers off all of the operations, all of the funds of the town.
Councilor Ramsey, I can't see you on the screen, so anytime, just please speak up, please.
Yeah, no, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. See you now.
So are there any further questions on page 2? Okay, hearing none, I'll move to page 3 briefly, because a lot of the detail of page 3 are included in the schedules that are attached to your financials. But this schedule is the overall calculation of your annual surplus. So for the year, you will see that you budgeted an annual surplus of 421,000. And you came in for the year at a surplus of 459,992. That again is taking into consideration the results of your water utility, all of your funds, as well as your operations. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on these schedules to give you some highlights of what these numbers are. So I'm going to ask you to turn to page 20 of your financial statements. So as I mentioned, what you have here is Schedule A gives you details of the revenue sources that you have, and Schedule B gives you details of your expenditures. On the revenue side, in the taxes section is the first section. You'll see that, the growth here is what's showing. So growth in your residential taxes, as well as continuing to be a driver to your bottom line is your deed transfer tax. So deed transfer tax, you budgeted 75,000, but it came in at just over 200,000, which is also up from last year. If I may, I'll continue through the revenue section. If there's any questions on the revenue section, we can address those all at once. On the next page, page 21, revenue from your own sources. So a couple things here to highlight. One, you I guess were the beneficiary of a high interest rate environment. So your cash in the bank grew and rates went up, and both of those things contributed to your investment income being 91,000 compared to basically budgeting for a $2,500 revenue source. So that's been a very large windfall for you for the year. And to say interest on investments, it's actually interest on bank accounts. So just to be clear, there's no investments. It's just general deposit accounts. And the other thing I just wanted to highlight for you, because it is new, is the revenue that you earned through your solar. You budgeted 28,000, you earned about 25,500. So that's a new revenue source for you. And I just want to point out for you where that is on your financial statement. In your unconditional transfers, as well as your conditional transfers from other governments, if you recall last year, there was a double up of the equalization grant as well as the gas tax rebate. That went back to regular amounts this year. So they're half of what they were last year. So you see your equalization grant at 202 and your federal gas tax at 85,000. So that's the highlights of the revenues. Any questions on revenues?
Councilor Osborne first, and then Councilor Burton.
I just have a question regarding, and maybe you can speak to it, is under the miscellaneous, is there a note on that, or do we know what that is? Because it's significantly more than what we budgeted for. Do you see that?
I do. I don't have the particular details. It's made up of a lot of different things. I can get them for you. I think what you would find there is that it's just so many smaller things that it would just sort of kind of clutter your statement.
Exactly, yeah, so what it entails is summer programs, all stuff that are up from COVID time. You'll see the offsetting expense increase. So summer programs, miscellaneous grants that Aaron gets, we are trying to clean that up and put that into the correct grant account, but some still get in there. So your summer programs were huge. Those are probably the bulk of the small ones, but it's miscellaneous government grants or miscellaneous grant grants, and then for summer programs and our after-school programs are in there. And they are higher than last year and higher than anticipated in the budget.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. We're going to move on.
That's good?
Everybody's
Yep.
good?
We're good, Darren.
Okay, I'll move to the expenditures. So on the expenditure piece, starting on page 22, first line item here that I'd like to just highlight for you is, and I'm actually gonna make a change to this. Under legislation, other, that would represent election expenses, and typically we would not say other, we would say election expenses. So we're gonna make an amendment for that in the final version, but that line item of 8,500 was election expenses.
8,500.
The 8532, the third line down.
Page 22. In legislative, on the third number down, really in the middle. 85.
We okay?
Yep.
On the next page is you have your protective services, not a lot of change there. Transportation services would be towards the bottom of your page. Under common services, public works wages represents 2 new hires. So the 270,000 that you see there, the growth would be with respect to increased employees. Under the road transport section, roadway services, the cost of 70,605 is over budget and over last year. That's the big area there would be the repavement of the parking lot next to the town hall. So that represent a lot of that change. On page 24, not much change to your environmental health. Under environmental development, you have two areas that have increased fairly significantly. One being your building inspection, and that represents sort of the change in the way that you do your building inspection and pay for your building inspection during the year. And then under planning and zoning, you have your CBCL work that's being done, the study that's being done, and the approval for that has been recorded to planning and zoning. Under your water treatment, so under your water treatment, you will notice that the plant operation and pumping has gone up. That represents an additional hire within that category, and talk to that when we go to the water statements just a little bit more and show the result of that on your surplus. So the next page, on page 25, are there any questions on the expenses?
Councilor Osborne.
Just one question on the building inspection, is that because we go with the town of Truro now?
Yeah, so what happened is partway through the year, we signed a contract with them to increase their fees, so they do fire inspection and dangerous and recycling. So that's why that.
Any other questions?
I'm interested in legal services.
I've got an answer for that. So legal services, I went through all of the billings from Virgil McDougall, and I'm gonna say at least 50% of it was actually 50 St. Andrews, the demo and all of the legal advice surrounding that. Other sort of time-consuming items were walking trail easements, leases for Big River, the fire department, I think just there were 3 leases, the library MOU being reviewed, and then subdivision issues. So most of it was town operations. And like I said, the big heavy hitter was the demo.
Any other questions?
Okay, I will get you to look at page 25 then, and just to show you where your reserves are. So as I mentioned earlier, your total reserves are $2.1 million at the end of 2023. That's made up of 4 separate reserves. You can see them there, the biggest being your special operating at 1.5 million. So that did actually go down this year because you did approve paying for some of your capital purchases through your operating reserve. So the 129 would be a net of the transfer that came over from the operating fund as a result of the surplus, less amounts that you've approved to transfer to pay for some of the capital asset additions that you incurred during the year. So the surplus, that the reserves are still very strong. And then the last 2 pages is simply breaking down your funds between the operating fund and the capital fund. So your operating fund is obviously just that, where the majority of your operations go through. As I mentioned earlier as well, you can't have a surplus in this fund. You have to transfer out any surplus that you have. And at the end of the year, there was $219,923 of surplus that got transferred to the special operating reserve. That in my view highlights the statements of the consolidation. And you had the statement, so I just wanted to touch on what I thought were the highlight points. Are there any questions on any of the notes, any of the numbers that has not been already addressed?
Counselor Osborne?
Page 26, the one that we just talked about, do you know what that other revenue from own sources is? Again, that's up significantly. It's up from 115 from 115,328 to 192,004. You see that?
Yeah, so that's compared to the budget, but that's on, the details are on page 21. So you can look there. So the heavy hitter is we have solar, 26,000 this year. We were talking about the miscellaneous revenue, so the detail to that line is on page 21.
Oh, okay.
And the other piece is the interest that you receive.
Any other questions or comments, council?
Okay, so if we want to switch over to the water statement. Water statement doesn't have quite as much going on in it. So the water statement has, basically you have your operating fund, as well as the capital fund. There's no reserve funds in your operating, or in your water, sorry. On the operating fund, on the statement of financial position, not a whole lot of change here. Your actual collections on water has reduced the receivable from your residents. Payables have stayed quite consistent, and your fund balance has increased by about $93,000, which represents the accumulated surplus for the year, which will show on page 3. Page 3, you'll see the revenues and expenses, the utility. On the operating revenue side, you'll see the sale of water and your public fire protection, $684,000, which is both over budget and over last year. On the operating expense side, in the pumping section is where I mentioned earlier the additional salary. So you do have one additional employee that is being charged out to your pumping costs. The other areas are operating within where you expected them to for the year, resulting in a surplus after making your debt payments of $92,658. Last year it was at 130. The budget was at just shy of 15,000. So the results were better than budgeted, less than last year, but consider that you've included an additional employee from where you were at this time last year. Your fund balance is at $651,000 for the operating fund. Questions on this particular statement before we look at capital?
Okay, if you guys are okay, move forward with that.
Then I'll ask you to turn to page 5, if you would. So this is the financial position of the capital fund. Again, the assets, liabilities, and net assets. There hasn't been a whole lot of activity here this year. There were no additions to your water utility. Only adjustments to your tangible capital assets that you will see, because you will notice it went down. There were some disposals of some assets that no longer had use, so they were disposed of at their cost, and they were fully depreciated, as well as the asset retirement obligation that had to get booked, and that was at $11,500. So pretty quiet year in the capital of the water utility. Long-term debt is being repaid as scheduled. And the depreciation reserve is also being impacted by the regular amortization of your asset. So you have a total surplus of 1.1969943 in your capital fund. Most of that capital is you've paid for it. 4.7 million of water utility capital, of which deferred contributions, or that would be grants received, or for about 2 million. So that's your surplus. With respect to the water utility, you do also include in note 6, which is on page 11, return, your rate of return. So the rate of return for the water utility is at 10.1%, which is down from last year at 12.2%, but it increase your expenses for additional employees. Any questions on the water utility?
I guess I'll just make a quick comment too about the rate of return is that we're in year 4 of our UARB contract, so our water rates are flat. And of course, expenses are going up, so your rate of return is going to drop as well as the additional employee.
What is the,
Yeah, so now we just hold the rates until we have another review.
Any other questions or comments, council?
Thank you very much, Darren. It was great working with you guys again this year. I look forward to next year.
Great, thank you. And I just want to recognize there was a change in audit standards here that required your staff, and I would say be a lot fell on Randy. A lot of extra time that was required to document for us. Appreciate that she put into that as being prepared for the audit. The ARO certainly took some time as well. So just that piece that was required for the current year, and give thanks for providing for.
Thank you, Randy. Okay, let's move on.
Thanks, Darren.
Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great evening.
Good to hear. Okay, we're moving into number 8, written petitions and correspondence, and in your package 8A, we have one from Minister Lord from Housing.
So we need a list of properties.
Oh, sorry, I did nothing on that.
And I did just have a call from MLA in regards to Housing Day. It came in kind of scrambled. My phone picks up the text messages, and I'm going to call back tomorrow. So it might be part of that, because part I could make out was in regards to housing. So maybe this is part of the follow-up Deputy Mayor for that. I'll advise Randy.
Well, and the initial request we got was any thing for mobile homes. We don't have any capacity there. Our park is filled. We have nothing else that's going for that. So their request was specific to stuff. So I didn't. There was really nothing to respond with. Like, we have no capacity for what they're looking for. Yeah.
The province owns a piece of land that's very desirable, would be perfect for seniors housing, portable seniors housing, not a park like here. Sorry. The province owns a very desirable piece of property in the town that would be ideal for seniors affordable housing. So maybe that's something at some point we can.
I think it's high priority on everybody's doing that. Look at that.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move into 9, agenda item number 9, which is business. We're going to start with staff reports, and I'll pass this over to Randy. Please.
Okay, so I'm just,
Sorry, what's this, Melbourne First Nation?
okay, so It's attached to my admin
Okay.
report.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
My admin report, yeah. So, there are two items that, we'll talk about. There's 4 on there, but the boundary review we'll handle later, so we'll discuss that. But TCPEP update, that's where the multi-mailbox thing is, so I'm just, they are in the process, it's actually pretty exciting, of working with, Millbrook in getting a, doctor clinic potentially, completed in 1 year. So it's a time frame, and it'll add 6 doctors, different types of doctors, multi-disciplines, different disciplines anyway, and potential for minor surgical services. So they have the doctors to fill it. I guess what I gleaned from that meeting is that it's not about not enough doctors, it's about we don't have the clinics for the doctors. So they have, again, already filled essentially the interest of that clinic with doctors. So they're moving forward. The next step in the process is that they want to get a letter of support from the towns and everyone that is part of TCPEP and anybody in the community. So they'll send that out, so I'll forward that to, we'll probably have it at the next meeting, but that's the next step, is a letter of support that they will take to Nova Scotia Health Authority to get approval to start this process. And again, Millbrook is partnering with Lindsay Construction. They can get it done in a year. That's pretty exciting. So, and of course, another thing they are doing, which they had an AGM last night, is they're doing a transportation study, which I think would marries quite well with that clinic, is that if we had some kind of transportation access to that service center, that would be something we'd look into. So they're looking into a regional approach, and as we'll see later, Aaron's looking into a more studio central approach to transportation. So pretty exciting. TCPEP is certainly exciting. And then JRTA, I just brought the documentation, really super high level. Step number 1, baby step, just indicating on, they were really trying to just get information from municipalities on what can they bring to the table as a joint regional kind of approach. I guess number 1 that I brought forward for Studiac is number 2. How do we safely cross the number 2? Are they going to do anything? And maybe as a group, because East Hants is absolutely interested in it as well, we can move the province forward, because they're the ones that say don't do anything. You can't cross over, which I found out about. I brought up you can't do anything. So hopefully now as a group we can push them to get us some options with highway number 2. So that has a lot of potential as well. And of course we discussed the potential for community. Yes.
Hi. Get you back to the TCPEP and number for a second. I know that the mayor and I were at an open house with the CEO of NSHA. Now, and she approached us after the meeting about having a collaborative center here in Studiac. Would this mitigate that? How would that impact us if we want to do our own?
I don't know that it would or wouldn't, but I think it clears up and I'd have to ask them what the region is, but it clears up the regional backlog of doctors. So I would assume we're in the region because we're in that group. So I think our backlog would be cleared. So with us having one, does that help East Hants? Right? So really it would just be us and only in the immediate and further south. So there's potential. I don't think I would say no to any opportunity here. Yeah. Right? And that is a draw for people and residents in it. And then we don't necessarily have to have the transportation to Millbrook.
I know she did talk to us after that meeting.
Councillor, you're talking about 2 years ago, maybe?
It might have been.
It's back, that's
It's been a while.
in Truro.
In Truro. Yeah.
I did hear our former CAO say this was another, but Through the long-term plan was Millbrook, like first Masstown, Millbrook next, and then perhaps this area down the road. So it seemed to be like,
I just didn't want it to like jeopardize if there's one there, does that jeopardize us having one here? You know what I mean?
And if I recall correctly, they were looking at it holistically from the Colchester catch basin.
Exactly.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions, comments on Becky's report? Great report. Thank you. Exciting times.
Are they asking for any sort of funding with this, or are they?
It's our regular funding right now,
Okay.
but if they move forward, there is the potential that what they're trying to do there, so in partnering with Millbrook, I don't know if they own or what kind of interest they have in Hampton, but what they're trying to do is temporary lodging for any doctors that they need, so they may go out and ask for some funding for that, but that's a way down the road,
Right. But to construct it and stuff, years nothing.
No, it's Millbrook, they're, 3 months are rent-free, then it's at cost for 3 years, and I mean, it's, and they're trying to have, native doctors, right, as part of the process.
Okay, financial and. back to you,
Financial.
please.
So any questions, it's pretty short, short report, with a focus on the audit, so any questions? The financial statements were really only 3 months into the year, so, there's not a lot to report yet. Not a lot of action.
Did you hear anything concrete about the Riverside thing, like you tell me full funding?
Yes, well, yes, okay, so, and I don't, I know.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to take this one, but they said, yes, move forward. But we don't have the official stamp from the federal.
Okay.
But they said move forward. So that,
They-
I'm
they-
gonna say yes.
We're okay.
They haven't done their,
We'll start.
they haven't done their announcement yet.
Yeah, maybe, right?
they didn't take a sign.
That's a good word. Thanks,
So that's probably for them to do, like you said, the big hurrah.
I think that's what Paul was saying. Okay, any other questions or comments, council? Please. If not, we'll move on to community development, and then it's over to Aaron. Good evening, Aaron.
Hello. Kind of short report. The biggest highlight was we weren't selected on our first round of Canada Summer Jobs, but then we were awarded a position, which is around 2,000 for the summer. So not a huge amount, but I think a little bit helps. And then sports and summer camps are going really well. We're, I think, 10,000 over estimated budget and revenue this year, so that's great. Yeah. Any other questions about anything on there?
Say 10,000 over.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I was wondering.
I just have a question about music in the park.
Yes.
So, I had, an email from the family. So my question is more about how can we ensure that doesn't happen again? And what time is, I'll wait for the train. Think we might be good? Okay. What time is the actual, I know it's advertised from 2 until 4, but I know I was bringing my mom home from the hospital on Sunday around 3:15, and it was shut down and everything was being packed up. So is that what happened with the
So,
miscommunication, or?
no, so the sound check is at 1 for the artists that play. So, our resident who's volunteering his time goes around 12-ish to set up, which I didn't know about, but we can communicate that better. So when they arrive at 1, everything's to be set up, and then they do the sound check, and it starts at 2. And then they have an open mic at 3, and if there's nobody there who want to perform the open mic session, then they wrap it up.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, and as to how we communicate that with the residents, It was posted on the gazebo, like there's a poster on there for the music in the park. And then we did promote it a few times, but in our rental agreement, in our policy on our website, it does say a public space can't be rented. We do own the space and it is an event put on by the town. So they are more than welcome to call us and I can tell them if the town is offering any events in advance. But
Right.
Yeah.
So it's my understanding that they did contact you.
they called me because there was a splash pad malfunction.
Oh.
And then I told them that someone will be there to fix that.
Okay.
But I didn't hear anyone about the gazebo portion.
So there might just, so is there any way we can, I mean, the poster says 2 to 4. and-
Yes.
And it's, I drive by 3:15 and it's shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And is there any way we can put like signage saying that, from 12 o'clock onwards, the
Sound prep and
spaces,
stuff.
yeah,
We
something?
can try it, yeah.
Yeah,
We'll put it in there and then hopefully it stays. And that will help.
yeah, maybe inside then.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sure.
all right, awesome, that's all I have. Doing a wonderful job as always, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, we'll move on to Public Works. Evening, Jeff. How are you, sir?
Yes. So the biggest thing that I have is just to mention the Riverside project going forward. And also the community center side, I don't know if I should do that now, bring that up now, or is that?
You can bring it up now and then we can vote on it when it's in business.
So we had 3 quotes on the community center side, the highest being 197, the lowest 63,948, and the middle at 133,749. So Total One Contracting was the low bidder, and they had a very detailed description of the work that they're doing, which is exactly what I asked for, and they had to be the lowest. So I recommend that we go with Total One Contracting for $62,948.14 plus HST. And the rest of it, it's just a report. Any questions on that?
What did we have budgeted? Do you remember?
Uh,
We have
Hundred.
150, yeah, 150, but we had some funding for that, which we still have. So I think 78 is the total for there with 35.
Yeah.
So we're well under the. There.
Speaking of the community center, what about the washrooms? Is that on?
We're working on that one.
Oh, okay.
That's right.
I have a couple of questions for you. One, do you know this company? I know you recommend it because of the low price, but not enough detail.
I haven't dealt with them, but I've seen them out there, and I've seen some of them.
And you're okay with the quality work?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
They were the most
I
detailed.
sound like the former CAO.
Well, the other 2 quotes that came in,
Yeah.
they didn't even come look at it.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Just a couple other questions. Hydrant flushing, did we do those this spring?
We only do it once a year.
Only once a year now? Oh, okay.
We've only done it once a year for probably at least 5 years.
Oh, okay, okay. And I had a resident ask me about ditch clearing and mowing,
We don't mow ditches,
okay?
and we only clear ditches if there's a restriction or, basically that's it. If there's a ditch is overflowing, it's not flowing properly, but if it's just because there's bushes in the ditch or the grass, they want to clean it up, they can, but if the water's flowing, we don't do it.
So only if there's a restriction on the water flow. Would that be right?
Pretty much.
That's all I have.
When is Dexter starting on Riverside Avenue?
Depends on after tonight.
We haven't awarded the bid.
Okay.
So,
I'm assuming then that if they are awarded.
I mean, we've been in touch with them. And we still won't really know because they haven't been awarded, so nothing's ordered. That means no manholes, there's nothing, like, could be quite late yet.
Thank you, Jeff. and then planning advisory, Grant's not here, do you want me to speak for that? So we did not have quorum for our last meeting for planning advisory. Two items were brought forward. With discussion purposes only, one was regulations of swimming pools going forward and the need for an egress road, given what happened in HRM. So that's to be brought forward to September's meeting. That's the report I have.
I have some questions.
I'll try my best to answer.
I know we've talked about egress roads. I know it was raised in your discussion. I believe Deputy Mayor Chapman and I were on the call as well. I'm just wondering, I know you don't meet again until September. Just wondering if we can have a more wholesome discussion as a council regarding egress roads as a whole. Simply because by September, I'm just very concerned, and I'm not just very concerned about St. Andrew Street, I'm very concerned about where Deputy Chapman is. I'm very concerned there's a couple of other areas that are becoming more densely populated as the time progresses. So I'm just wondering if we could possibly put it on the agenda for just a more wholesome council discussion. How do we feel as a council? Where should we move forward? And maybe give some direction to PAC regarding egress roads. Maybe council doesn't have the appetite for it.
I think that's a reasonable request. Looking at August or September.
August, I was thinking, yeah, before your PAC.
Yeah, and then bring it forward.
Yes.
I'm fine with that if council is. It's a legit concern. Please.
That's all I have.
Okay, we're finished staff reports, so I'm looking for a motion to approve. Council, can I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the staff reports as presented for the July 20th, 2023 combined council meeting.
Moved by Councilor Quinn, second, please. Second, Deputy Mayor Chapman. Discussion on the motion. Question has been called. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? 9B, approval of fiscal 2022, 2023 financial statements. So we have a motion in regards to that.
Yes, we had the presentation already,
So, any questions on that before I ask for a motion?
I just have one. It's just, it's really, and I know this isn't the staff's fault, but to receive the audit findings 5 minutes before council starts, it's hard to read while he's doing the presentation. And again, I know it's not staff's fault. I guess I would have liked to see him fit an hour before, so I would have been able to read it through. I don't know if it's a comment, I don't know if it matters whether we pass the financial statements tonight or not. I'm not sure what the council feels. I just wanted, that's how I feel. It was difficult to read through. I know I didn't get a chance to read it all.
So I'll defer back to you, Randy. What's your
Well,
expert for this?
he walked through that document, I thought, pretty thoroughly. The management letter, which he discussed, which said there were no significant findings, is essentially the piece of paper that we have to provide to the province, and I think should provide you with the comfort that there isn't anything that we're at risk for.
I'll gauge council. What is the consensus?
I'm prepared to make the motion. So I move to approve the town of Stewiacke's audited consolidated financial statements for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023.
Moved by Councilor Green, second, please. Second by Mayor Chapman. Discussion on the motion.
Question.
Question has been called. All in favor? Opposed? So moved.
So there is another motion.
Your package.
Yeah, I can make the second motion. I so move to approve, excuse me, the town of Stewiacke water and utility financial statements
per fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023.
It's moved by Councillor Roger Lane, seconded Stewart.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Green. Discussion on the motion?
Aye.
Motion has been called. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. Thank you. 9C, ban review. Passes over to Randy first.
Okay, so in the package is the entirety of the survey that we sent out in regards to the boundary review. So there are a lot of questions on there that were just for informational purposes. So what I've done with the summary page, which is at the end of that survey, there's one document that has 3 yellow highlights and 2 boxes. So what I did is I pulled the 3, what I deemed to be the 3 specific statements on the number of counselors for the boundary review. I pulled those out and I highlighted the greatest percentage. So on the first one, it's, as you may be aware, the town of Studiac Council currently includes 6 councillors and the mayor who collectively serve 1,600 residents. Based on what you know or have heard, which best represents your view on the current number of council? The highest vote was there are too many, at 45%. Second question, if you selected that there are too many or too few in the question about how many councillors do you think there should be to represent Studiac's population of approximately 1,600, at 49%, the survey said it was 4. So now those two complement each other. And so this third question, to what extent do you agree or disagree that the town of Studiac Council with its 6 councillors adequately represents its residents? 44% said mostly agree. So keeping that in mind, what I did too is I got a chart based on the population of the census and the number of councillors. I took all of the towns and we did a per resident, number of residents per councillor, sorry about that. So on the column on the left, on the right-hand document is the list. So if we stay at 6, we are 260 residents per councillor, if we remain at 6. If we change to 4, we're still at 389 and still at the low half if we change to 4. So based on those documents and that survey, staff recommends that we do reduce council from 6 to 4.
So if I may,
Yeah, just one second.
sure.
Okay, Councillor Foster.
So so you're right, when you take the most, but when I looked at surveys and I looked at this one in particular, when I look at the first question, it's the right amount, or there are too few. When you add those two together, you actually get 56% of them wanting it to remain at 6. When you look at the second question, if you take the last 3, which are 6, 8, 10, you actually get 52% of them, of the survey results, wanting it to be at 6 or higher. So when you look at it that way, you actually get it actually mirroring each other at 6, 6, and 6.
So the first one again, so if it's not the right amount and there are too few, added together is 42%, which is still lower than there's too many.
So you have to add the,
I'm not adding the not sures.
what?
I didn't add the not sures. That doesn't
Okay.
count. So if you go 34 plus 8, that's 42%. And just a note, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
forgot to tell you guys this. The survey was completed also by non-residents. As far as the boundary review, I took those out. So this is residents only, and so eligible voters only could pick. So that's the difference in the full survey versus what I've documented here.
That's what I figured when I saw that there was a little orange sliver there. So there was about, if there was 139 responses, so there was like 6 non-residents.
Yeah.
So when I did the math, I included the not sure. So if you want to do it that way, it's still very, very close. It's 42 versus 45. And then the next two would be 6 and 6. So I guess when I look at that, and based on the feedback that I have received by a number of residents after my breakfast here at the Legion, which I ended up being caught for over an hour outside, every single person talked to me wanted it at status quo.
See, I've heard the exact opposite from most people I spoke to, just that there's too many.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to comment too that we did have an opportunity for the residents to come out and voice any concerns. No one voiced any. So I'm not sure that it's a significant issue. That to me says we had a public hearing, 0 people showed up.
We had a public hearing.
You were in attendance,
Okay.
Aaron had,
Are you talking about the open house?
yes, well, open house, yeah. So that was advertised as the boundary review discussion. No one attended.
It was, I thought it was advertised as if you needed help to fill in the survey.
No, it was the,
It was help with survey or had questions about the boundary review.
Yeah, so it was
so if anybody
so it wasn't
didn't
a public hearing.
okay, I said public hearing in error. I meant that the public was invited to attend if they had concerns about the boundary review that hadn't filled out the survey already.
Okay, I guess I took that open house, because it was my suggestion for anyone who needed help filling in the survey. I also had a number of people say to me that they only received 1 paper copy per household, and if there's 2 people in the house, how do you do 2? I know some people did do, put both names on and did like a little chart and stuff. Not everyone did that. I also had a number of people express to me that some of the questions they didn't want to answer, and if they were online, you couldn't go further. Like, so the question, did you vote in the last election? They didn't want to answer that. That's an example. But you couldn't go any further. So they didn't complete it. I did speak to Erin about that at the open house, and she agreed. But, so we have what we have. I'm just looking at it at a different way than staff is. And I'm looking at, if you look at, especially question number 2, if you take anything other than number 4 and you add them together, you're at 52%.
So I think we're have to look at it earlier today. Am I correct? So I know this, if we can. 45.3 said reduced, 33.1 said leave alone. Is that, am I reading that right?
Well, it's in the chart.
In the chart.
It's just, again, the survey is slightly skewed because it includes the non-residents, so mine does. It's 45 said too many, and 34 said it's the right. So mine is residents of.
Similar ratio.
Yes.
Okay, council, before I bring that motion, any more discussion? Council Ramsey, just make sure you're part of this.
Yeah, no, I'm here, I'm listening, but I think it should go to 4, but I did have one resident that lived here in town for his whole life, and he owns a lot of property in town, and he thought that was a big mistake going down to 4, so that's it.
Okay, with that, 9C, I'm going to ask for that motion to be read, please.
What motion would you like to be read? Because I don't know if we're
The boundary review.
I don't know if we're at 4, 6. Like, I know what staff's recommending, but I haven't heard anything except for from Councilor Ramsey and myself. Right?
So I'll pre-read that. I'm going to pre-read the motion so we have clarity. I so move to approve the reduction of council from 6 to 4 as part of the municipal boundary review, or I move to approve the reduction of council members from 6 to 4 as part of the municipal boundary review with the following changes. So that's what's before you.
Or I guess if we take a poll, we'll leave it as remain at the
So if you
same.
defeat the motion, then it would stay the same.
Great, we'll do that as part of this.
So if the motion is defeated, it sits.
Everybody okay with that before we proceed?
Might it be in order just maybe to have a little quick round table,
Yes.
maybe that might be
Sure.
what Councillor Osborne prefers.
I guess my question, or my concerns are when the population starts to grow, because we know that, we're projecting growth and so that's kind of one of the things that I'm thinking of. If we go down to 4, when can we review it again? Fully review it again in 10 years, when the population's up to 2,500 or whatever, like
It's every 8 years.
And my understanding is the UARB very rarely raises the number and almost always lowers the number.
But we still have a long way to go.
Yeah.
Maybe even based, if we reduce it to 4, at 389 residents per council member. We have a long way to go before we're anywhere near Kentville, Yarmouth, Bridgewater, New Glasgow, Truro.
And I would agree with you if we had districts, but we don't.
Also a comment, sorry, that I forgot to mention in our recommendation, is that we have reduced committees from 23 to 4. So,
Right now, but that doesn't mean that's not gonna grow, right? Like
so
at
23, it's unlikely if you
Yeah.
take into consideration what our municipal advisor said, but I'm just bringing you the information forward.
Yeah.
As part of our recommendation.
Deputy Mayor.
As I always said, I think we should stay at 6. I think we should stay at 6 for the representation, and because we have 4 councillors that are not as active, and because of work time or whatever, that's just going to get done. Now, I know that other places have said that, well, even when you're 4, and you're getting along just fine, but I still think we should stay at 6.
I'm leaning 4. I feel it, I guess since I've been on council, we've been through a lot of changes, so, I would like to see some of the things that some of the councillors do maybe be done by staff, and that whenever there's a change and a turnover in an election, it's like kind of starting all over again. And I think more things that are looked after by the staff can continue, and rather than getting, council still has to get up to speed, but I guess I thought this both times we've looked at it, that it might be, that's what I want to say, I just think that for more continuity, some of the things could be done by staff, and also it is a small town, it's not a lot of residents per council.
Councillor. Councillor Wolfman.
So I've always been in favor of 4. I was in favor of 4 last time, based on the numbers. In this chart, based on being sitting on council for 6 years, over 7 years. I think that 4 would be sufficient for what is required of us currently. We still have a long way to grow, I think, before it becomes a capacity issue with 4. And listening to the presentation that we had from the town, Yarmouth, was it? Shelter, sorry, who did reduce their numbers, and they found that they were more efficient with fewer people. There was more engagement from fewer councillors, as opposed to maybe some feeling that they're doing the bulk of workload or whatever versus other council members, so I'm in favor for it.
Councillor Osborne.
I'm only going by what people have said to me, and when I looked at these survey results, and I certainly, I know both sides of it. I know I was around the table the last time we looked at this, and we anticipated growth, but we just certainly didn't anticipate the growth that we had. I understand that I hear 23 committees down to 4. However, I'm not sure how many of those 23 committees were actually active and how many were ad hoc and et cetera. I agree with Deputy Mayor Chapman that it spreads the workload out, especially if we remain at 6. It also gives opportunities for working individuals to apply because it does spread the workload out amongst more people. It's not going to be a lot of cost savings. I am a bit concerned when I hear giving more, let the staff do more. I view my role very actively as a representative of the people of the town of Stewiacke. And I find sometimes council isn't aware of some items until a resident brings it to us. We don't always hear, not that we need to know everything. I'm not saying that we need to know 24/7, but there are some major things that we don't hear about until after the fact. And I know when we looked at this the last time, we talked about all of these things as well. And we are growing substantially. All we have to do is look at the building permits. So when I look at the survey results, when I listen to the people who stopped me outside the Legion, when I listen to my colleagues, when I listen to Councillor Ramsey say that one of the longest standing residents that he's aware of that owns a lot of property says status quo, then I'm in favor of status quo.
Councillor Ramsey.
I've already said how I feel. It's 4, and you know, the gentleman that I asked me about why we were going down to 4 instead of 6. I've asked him to attend some meetings, and you know, he's a good guy, but he just hasn't showed up. Anyhow, I'm for 4.
I'm the last one here, I always go last, so my vote going forward will be 4, and it's based on ratios and looking at other municipalities and trying to look at how we can effectively make our committees more effective. And I do understand and hear the talk around the table. 23, some were ad hoc, but we're a long ways from 6 to 23 in my opinion, so that's where I'm at. But great discussion, everyone, really good points.
I also think there's better chance for diversity in this. Can I ask a question? When this was brought up initially, over many years ago, what was the thought process behind, why was it brought up in the first place and why was it brought up again? What, is it just something that we have to look at every year?
8 years.
It's
like,
required.
right, yeah. So the thought process, 8 years ago was exactly the same discussion, but yeah.
Okay, Council, thank you. That's a good discussion. I'm going to make that, ask for that motion. And then we'll see where we are.
Okay, so I'll move to approve the reduction of council members from 6 to 4 as part of the municipal boundary review.
Moved by Councillor Perlman, seconder, please. Seconder, Councillor Roger Lang. Just going to stop for 1 second. This is an important vote, so I would ask you to hold your hand up, so make sure that Leah, you can record the vote correct. Not correct. Make sure we don't make any mistakes on this one. Okay, Leah? Thank you. Okay, discussion on the motion? Obviously, the question on the call. All in favor? Opposed? Let the record show 4 in favor, 3 against. Motion passes. Just a motion, please.
We are first, there's just one document here. Right.
I couldn't find it. So there's one for later on, but not here. I couldn't find it for it.
Yeah, well, there is one document, just a review from WSC for. So, yeah, it's, down here. So what area is presented? The traffic flow.
Oh, well, I did too for a while.
We have a motion to hear.
No, I have not.
And there's just one piece of paper.
Okay, council, we're back to our motions. Well, I'm the same way, trust me.
Everything was so good, almost made it till the end.
There it is. See, told you I didn't have it.
It's, yeah.
So Aaron, back to you. In your agenda, it's number 9D, and that is traffic flow changes. It's just discussion and information from Aaron.
Yeah, so after we had our report presented by CBCL, it was discussed on traffic calming and pedestrian friendly downtown cores. So staff thought it'd be best to proceed forward with just seeing what that might look like if we went one way in front of the town office and did a loop back. So it's on here, on your sheet. So the one temporary route they presented to us, so we could do this very cost effectively, was drawn out for us. And as you can see, this red circle there, the transport trucks that would drive that would have to make this turn to go back up would go on the curb, which is not safe. So at this point, staff has decided that this is not a temporary thing, it's a larger discussion, and we don't know what the steps are yet. But we wanted to, move forward with the recommendations on CBCL and try this, and this is what it's come to. So just an update on that.
If we were making this one way, would you turn like just right here?
Yeah, so like for
That's
this temporary,
like, that turn, when I was trying to find parking, like that's kind of
yeah.
it's not a super safe
We
place
had
to
quite
try
a few
and turn
concerns and
someone
a
either.
large discussion yesterday with the transportation engineer, is that what his title was? Yeah, and there was a lot of questions from Jeff, Randy, and
Just like,
I.
'cause there's no stop sign, like no nothing, so you're trying to,
So it would be different. What they proposed, it doesn't come to that point. It comes more like this. Goes way up.
Yeah, they
That's
changed it a
that's
little
down
bit,
to-
but
And then there has to be a spillway for the trucks to make the turns. So it's solely driven, but to make the turn from all the way over here, tractors on the sidewalk on the other side.
I remember that from getting in the room. Get back up.
So we're not doing this?
I would say no.
Definitive. Thank you, Aaron. Okay, agenda. We have, H.
Yeah, so 9E, as I think Jeff spoke to, we've got WSP did the finalized tender with the de-scoping, so we sent that to Dexter, so they revised their bid. And so what I've sent you is then what WSP does as part of our engineering contract with them. They review the bid and just give their opinions, so they have no concerns with the revised de-scope bid. And when I talked to Mark, he actually knows my brother, so we got a little bit of a discount there of $134,000, so that was nice. So we have to, before Dexter can move, of course, the bid has to be accepted. And that's what we're asking for.
So which amount?
So it's 6.350, I think. Yeah, it's in the motion plus
Okay.
HST.
Ready for the motion?
Any questions?
First.
Yeah. No, yeah. And that's, we still,
But this is to do all of the Versailles, like from one end to the other end?
yes.
Okay, council, we ready? Can I have a motion, please?
I so move to approve the acceptance of the extra bid for the Riverside project in the amount of $6,350,000.
Moved by Mayor Chapman, seconded, please. Seconded by Councilor Osborne, discussion on the motion.
Question.
Councilor Ball, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. Go back to, this side, Jeff.
Jeff fixed, sorry. Did you want to talk again? You can
No.
get already.
No, just, like on your motions, it's Total One Contracting that I'm recommending that you did, that received the tender for $63,948.14.
Oh, we'll put TBD, okay. So we'll have to, so what's the company name?
Total One Contracting. What,
And the amount of HST.
before HST?
Yeah.
Yeah. $63,948.14.
So I'm looking for a motion with that amended. That's Total One Contracting for $63,000, $63,948.14. That motion, please, Council.
So I so move to approve the acceptance Total One Contracting for the community center siding in the amount of $63,948.14.
That's moved by Councilor Roger Lane, second please. Second by Councilor Osborne. Discussion on the motion?
Question.
Question has been called. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you, Council. Feasibility study on community transit. Aaron, anything else you want to bring to that?
I did do a report to that, and we received feedbacks on our RFP for feasibility study on the native community transportation. I met with CTCL, so Colchester Transportation Cooperative Limited, to discuss it. It's under their license and they're the experts on transportation in our area. After I talked with Sue, she had suggested Common Good Solution. They've done lots of work in the area of transportation. She's familiar with her work and she knows the project lead on that. That would be awarded with this project, and she has a good report with that. So that is the company I'm suggesting. Their proposal was great. The other ones were either too high or we didn't know who they were, or it wasn't quality work that was done in the past.
Any questions or comments, Council, before I ask for a motion?
We have 11,250 towards it with funding.
Yes.
And then did we budget anything or
No.
this is just coming in? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, a motion, please.
I'll move to approve the acceptance of the feasibility study on the need of community transportation to Common Good Solution in the amount of $20,815 plus HST.
Moved by Councilor Criddle, second please. Second by Deputy Mayor Chapman. Discussion on the motion?
Question.
Question has been called. All in favor? Opposed? So moved. Next is a letter that I received June 28th from Mayor Christine Blair. And that's in regards to a meeting with Colchester Municipality to discuss the library and the Joint Police Advisory Board. And there's 3 dates that have been suggested. There is suggestions. They do not meet in July. They start meeting again in August. I'd like to let the mayor know, which she probably did, that we meet, excuse me, once a month in July and August. So these are dates, but if not, then we'll get to it. So just trying to get consensus around the table for that.
They do prefer August 22nd. The 3 dates they've recommended are the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, with their preference being August 22nd.
That'd be a joint session. Where it's summertime, is there?
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, is that what I got?
So people. Yes. Tuesday, that's good.
Let's go into it again.
On the same day, Tuesday?
Doesn't matter to me. We'll just go.
So we'll be
August 22nd.
August 22nd.
Do you have a time?
Not sure when they're, when they meet.
I'm on vacation that week.
I'll send that out.
It's an evening audit
Yeah.
day.
Yes.
And would it be a Zoom thing or in person or?
Yeah, she'll find out. Yeah, I'll have to find out how they.
So it's during today, did you say? Evening?
Not sure, 6:30 or 7.
So I'll get the time and Zoom capabilities.
Oh, it's not in person.
I'm sure, but I'm sure you can attend in person.
And location, that's, yeah, that's working, so. To be decided. Moving to agenda item number 10. The first is a marketing levy bylaw. And we have a motion before you. And understanding is that the council is in favor. Did I have to read that motion?
You have to, yeah, so I guess we'll just talk to, 10A, I do have a piece of paper there. It just really, in the beginning, explains the bylaw process just from a high level, what we need to do. And the second paragraph after the list of the steps gives you the possible timelines if we do pass the bylaw tonight, when they'll be advertised, when it'll be finalized, et cetera. And then is a recommended motion and the requirements of what you have to read first to introduce.
Okay. Any questions on that before I read? Okay.
Bylaw and policy, want to talk about it?
Chair?
Okay.
Yeah, we asked this so many times.
Okay, so I'm going to read. It says Mayor Springs, I get that PowerPoint. 2022, yes, start it off. 2023-01 marketing levy bylaw is read at first time. So the possible motion.
So I would move to approve the first reading of the 2023-01 marketing levy bylaw, and further, that council advertise this bylaw in accordance with sections 168 and 169 of the Municipal Government Act before bringing the bylaw back for final reading.
Okay, moved by Councilor Crum, and seconded, please. Second by Councilor Osborne. Discussion of the motion.
Question?
Question has been called. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. 10B, 2000-07 tax billing policy update.
I'll just say one thing, and that is kudos to speaking for amending this and making a way for residents to pay their taxes a little bit easier and improve the process. So it's a good change, I would say. Thank you.
Any more discussion or questions to? Okay, hearing none, it goes to a motion for it, please.
So I would move to approve the amendment to policy 2000-07 tax billing policy update as presented.
Moved by Councilor Groman, a seconder, please. A second by Councilor Roger Blaine. Discussion of the motion.
Question?
Questions are called. All in favor? Opposed? I have to know Councilor Roger Blaine is smiling tonight, so it's throwing me off. That's not auditory, it's just funny.
I would solve it.
Don't be as nice. So we're going to move on to citizen comments. Leah, is there anything in the gallery, anybody in the gallery there's any comments, please?
I have two in the gallery and they're not, there's nothing in there.
No comments?
No.
I'll give it a few seconds then. Moving on.
So I will shut this off and you guys go in camera.
Okay, I'll move it to the next part of the agenda, is my report. July 20th, 23. July 23rd, I attended a raising of the progressive flag at Dennis Park. June 28th, attended the Future Works AGM in Truro. July 8th, attended an open house at MGM, well attended by the public. July 11th, I was honored to join the Stewiacke Fire Department and see the CPDSD member Chad Ramsey and and support team as we walked through Stewiacke, the Stewiacke Fire Department. We took time to discuss the stigma associated with PTSD among the public safety and military community. July 17th, I attended a final meeting of AltaGas in Truro to provide an update on the final stages of decommissioning. And I'll provide an update to council at that final report when I receive it from AltaGas. I've continued to have Wednesday meetings with Ms. Dookie on a regular basis on Wednesdays, 9 o'clock. Great meetings, actually. Attended, took part in various HR committee meetings with Councillor Crewman and Deputy Mayor Chapman and our facilitator, that was recruiter, Patrick Harding. And Patrick, I forgot to recognize you tonight. Okay, like always. I want to take time to thank our staff who do amazing work at the town of Stewiacke. The town office renovations in this chambers look amazing. The hanging plants, the fresh grass speak to the volume of work that's being done. The Recreation Department continues to provide a stellar program for our children and youth, and many are benefiting from that. Lastly, our volunteers in the town are second to none, and they're appreciated. I want to say thank you to Deputy Mayor Chapman and Councillor Crewman and our CEO recruitment lead, Patrick Harding, who I've had the pleasure of working with the past weeks as we work to recommend a qualified CEO to council who will provide leadership in a team environment for the town of Stewiacke. Finally, I'm looking forward to Town Days in August. It's always an amazing time, and this year I'm sure it's going to be no exceptions. And that's my report, and I'll pass it over to Deputy Mayor Chapman.
First of all, condolences to Councillor Ramsey and his family on the loss of their mother recently. I attended the raising of the Progressive flag for HR meetings, the NGM ribbon cutting, and anecdotally, I have a story from Hants East. Some people were down to some of my neighbors were down to Tie Fest, and they were talking. They weren't totally happy with it because the grass had been cut, and it just didn't look like anybody cared. Anyway, he said to my neighbor, "You are from Stewiacke?" Yes, and he said, "I drove through there the other night." He said, "And that's a little town that's got a form on." He said they've got it all together, and it's very pretty. So, yeah, I wish the staff was here to hear that. Anyway, you could relate that. And the complaints process is speeding. I put in a complaint this morning about a dangerous and unsightly property, and
To be fair, your timing was good because
First of all.
yeah, our dangerous and unsightly guys are here Monday and Thursdays.
We could have left them there.
Well, I didn't want her powerful position.
No. My powerful position and my personality is
Yes.
is noted in the survey.
Survey. Sorry.
What's that?
Okay. Something like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I have nothing to say.
Councilor Ramsey.
No, nothing for me tonight, thanks.
And also condolences to Chad, your loss.
Thank you.
Councilor Osborne.
I too attended the flag raising. I also attended the grand opening of MGM class, which was very well attended. I also met with Chad from C2C for PTSD. It was quite enlightening to speak with him. And I thank the Stewiacke Fire Department for hosting. I will be attending the opening of Hearts Haven Memorial Park this Sunday. For those of you who don't know, I am the chair of volunteer chair for the Colchester East Hants BON board. And Hearts Haven Memorial Park is honoring the memories of our VON nurses, Heather O'Brien, Kristen Beaton, and Kristen's unborn child. So that's this Sunday, so I will be attending that. I wanted to also just kind of talk and reflect on my time since being back. I get asked a lot, what's it like to be back? From new colleagues and former colleagues and new residents and old residents. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, because it is different. The way that we interact as council is different, and I just kind of want to reflect back a little bit from my time. So just indulge me, I will promise I will not be long. So from 2011 to 2016, I sat around the council table with a couple of people that are still here. And council respected each other, we respected each other's points of views. We may not have agreed and sometimes didn't agree, but we always made time afterwards to get together, put that aside, have a beverage, and really, I really do believe we were a team. And again, we didn't always agree. But we always made time for each other, and we always cared about each other's families. Town days, we participated in town days. Councillor Ramsey can attest to that because we got him dressed up one year and made him drive the truck, and it was fun. We had a lot of fun. Levies, we attended them together. We laughed together, and again, it was a great time. I enjoyed it. Staff were included. We used to go as staff and council, both at Christmas time. We used to go to the firemen's dinners in November. Since the by-election of 2023, it is different. Sometimes I feel excluded. Sometimes I feel like my questions aren't getting answered, or sometimes they're just ignored. I've witnessed bullying around this table, from one council member to another. Everyone around this table knows that there's a court challenge to my by-election win. Everyone knows around this table who was here in May that my opponents attempted to serve me in person in this chamber. Since that time, the court action has progressed, and it is now set aside a 5th time to October. But what you don't know is that my family has been subjected to bullying, to harassment, to rudeness, to abrasiveness. They don't deserve that. Come at me if you want to, but leave my family alone. That's it.
I guess, in that rudeness and abrasiveness, did that come from anybody around the table? We're allowed to clarify.
Yeah, you can clarify.
No, it didn't. No, it was from one of my opponents. No, it was from one of the opponents, and I should have clarified that, and I wish you had. And I will clarify that. Well, it's clarified now, I'll get it. No, it certainly was not from here. It was from that serving of the documents, that's why it carried from the service of the documents.
And the bullying from councillors around the table?
I've seen I think it's the way that we may speak to each other, not intentional, but I have been asked by residents what I have seen, what is different. And Councillor Krillman can talk to it, and Councillor Ramsey can talk to it. We didn't always agree, but we always respected each other. And I don't know if it's tone, I don't know if it may just be the tone of the person that it's a tone, like a normal tone, an everyday tone. And I may not recognize that, and residents may not recognize that. But it's also a willingness to talk about it, and I think that's what I miss. I miss that after our council meetings, we used to get together and we talk, and we don't do that.
To get you back to the bullying issue.
Yeah.
You're saying you've been bullied around the table?
Not me. I said I've witnessed it.
You've witnessed other people being bullied around the table? I'm really
What
sorry to hear that.
Yeah,
Could you give specifics, please?
I would rather not.
Maybe we should talk out of it.
Yeah, I would rather not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Concerning.
sad to hear. Yes.
It's very concerning.
Yeah.
And as the mayor in sharing this,
Yeah.
we have to look at that very seriously.
Absolutely. Yeah. But as far as what my family's enduring, it is not from any of my colleagues. It is not from any of the staff. It is from the court action.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Roger Lang.
I have that.
Councilor Prim.
Well, continue on with my committee work and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. So we have to move into, paperwork here, folks. A lot of paperwork tonight. 180-some pieces of paper, I believe. That's a deal close. We're going to move into an in-camera session, so we'll shut this off first. It's off. And so Leah,
I'll take.
I'll just